Alright, project this time is going ahead and pulling the transmission out of the car again. Because I got to change the input shaft bearing because it's kind of noisy. Anyway, so whenever I first put this transmission in, it was a little noisy. Took it back out and found a couple of those cage bearings that go inside the input shaft were kind of trashed. Anyway, these things were pretty beat. Anyway, so, thought back then, alright, that was what the noise was. So put the transmission back in again, and you could still hear that noise echoing through the torque tube. It sounded sort of like coming through the shifter. So, we had new torque tube bearings, new pilot bearing, new throwout bearing, everything. Could definitely hear the noise coming from the transmission. Kind of left that input shaft bearing. It seemed like it was smooth enough whenever you'd turn it, but he was making a little bit of noise. But when you have it at the end of a 4-inch pipe, it resonates any noise it's making. So that was definitely a problem. Anyway, so that needed to come out again. So figured while it's coming out, see if I could find an LSD to put in it. So I found an automatic LSD for a couple $100 and bought that. We'll go ahead and we'll get that put in the car too while we have it all out. Alright, so we got the automatic limited slip diff I bought on the bench and torn apart. Got everything separated by side for now. These are all the shims that were on it. It really didn't matter too much because we're not using those same... Well, we'll reuse the shims probably, but not in the same spot. We'll have to redo measurements since we'll be putting it in a different case. Here I got the carrier. What I did so far is just unbolt the ring gear, and surprisingly it just came right off. I was kind of expecting a fight, but we want to take a look and see what our discs are looking like. Let's see here. Here is a disc. Honestly, I don't know whether these are that good or not, but I am going to take some pictures and let the people on friend list that are smarter than me look at these and decide, but looks sort of okay. The friction disc isn't completely worn. That, looks like a little bit of a, don't want to say hot spot, but yeah, I don't know. Don't know how, expecting we'll sort of see the same deal on the other side. So yeah, there's our friction discs. Transmission's out of the 928 again. Didn't bother recording that because I've done that before. About to let the oil out of it because we have a limited slip diff to put in it. And I left it in the house, but have a new input shaft bearing to replace the noisy one there. So we'll go ahead and get the gear oil out of here and crack this sucker open. Alright, well, we got the fluid more or less out and the top cover off. There's a little bit of stuff on the magnet, and the fluid's a little shimmery. I guess that's expected. You get some wear on it. Nothing looks awful though, no chunks of anything. Once that finishes dribbling out down there, I guess we will let any that's in the diff section, because there's that little hump there, so there's a little bit of fluid down there yet. We'll let that out, and then we'll get the back cover off and go pulling that counter shaft through. Alright, so we got the input bearing cap off, but before we can pull that shaft out, we need to get the counter shaft pulled out of there so that the gear that 5th engages here drops down and we'll let it out of the teeth. Let's get this trans spun around here real quick. I think we'll pull the carrier out because I think it'll make our lives a little bit easier to get that counter shaft out. Did it before not doing that, but I'm taking the carrier out anyway, so may as well do that. So that little half moon right there where the light is that you can just barely see, that's the back of that counter shaft rod. So we use an aluminum punch and tap it forward. Like I said, I did that before, setting the punch on the end of a socket and hammering it, but like I said, we're going to take the carrier out to put the limited slip diff in here anyway, so may as well take it out of the way and just make things a little bit easier for us. Alright, well, we got the old open carrier out of there now, sitting up here next to the limited slip one. We will transfer the ring gear to this guy. I want to go back and make sure this one's all put together in order again one more time, and with everything oriented the right way. So anyway, we'll come back to that. We'll take the snap ring out of the front, and then we can start to knock the counter shaft forward with we'll put a piece of aluminum against it and then just gently tap it forward to get it moving. We went ahead and started tapping the counter shaft rod out, and I'm doing the same thing as before, putting a wooden dowel behind it, chasing it so that the gears don't fall all over the place in the transmission. And yes, I know working like this is less than ideal, but I don't have any other option right now. So we'll set this somewhere safe on the bench, and we'll go ahead and get the input shaft out. Alright, so in sticking with my theme of doing the right thing the wrong way, we have gone ahead and we put a socket in the end of the drive shaft tube, or the input shaft there. We put the pinch bolt back in on it, and sticking through that socket is a bolt that's head is captured by the socket, and now we have a nut on the end of it. So we can go ahead and start tightening up the nut, which is braced against the transmission case, and that'll start drawing our gear out. There we go. You hear that little clunk? That was it coming some. So now we just got to do that to get it out, and be careful, make sure it isn't catching anything. It shouldn't be, but it's got to be careful. Input shaft is out of the transmission, and looking at it, we don't have a ton of room between the bearing and the gear there. So while it goes against everything I usually want to do, I guess we are going to have no choice but to press off by the outer race, which I guess isn't a big deal because we're not planning on reusing that bearing. We're putting a new one in. And just so I don't lose it, I'm going to go ahead and slip that needle bearing back on there. Alright, so we'll take off that snap ring, then we'll go over to the press and see if it'll come off. Alright, sorry, the camera died on me and had to charge some, but... So this is a little bit sketchy because this doesn't quite fit in my press, but we've got one bolt in so it's not letting it spread further, and it is completely on the pins. And it's pressing the shaft out of the bearing. In fact, yep, it is all out now. And the bearing, you can feel a little bit of movement in it, which might be normal, but you can hear a real faint noise when you spin it out. I don't know if this will even pick up. So anyway, we'll go get the new one and see how it sounds. Alright, and here we've got our new input shaft bearing. And say if you believe the box, I think it said 1987 on it. So some new old stock. And let's see if we do the same thing with this one. If I put my hand through. Dead silent and no play. Alright, and let's get ourselves set up here in the press. So, got this cup from a ball joint press kit of mine, and that'll fit nicely on this lip here because I don't want to push on the outside of the synchro. So that'll fit there. Have this carrier bearing race. And I have a problem, because that's too tall for the damn press. Yep, that'll just barely do it. Get everything squared up here. There we go. Ah, that's because that carrier bearing race is getting pressed on that shaft now. We'll have to go tap that off. Well, apparently the camera decided not to record again, but anyway, there we go. We got our new bearing pressed on, and don't hear anything spinning it. So I think we are all good. So we'll put that bastard of a C-clip back on there. Should be good to put the transmission, or put this back in the transmission. Get our input shaft in. Yep, we're home free there. So, dowel's all the way through. Here's our counter shaft rod. Again, probably calling it the wrong thing, but... Alright, well, I had to turn the transmission upside down, but now I think they've more or less fallen into place. Oh yes. We are just about home. The only thing we're going to do is put a new O-ring on there for good measure. Alright, so we got the clutch discs for the diff soaking in some gear oil just so they're well lubricated. I think while we let those soak, we'll go ahead and get carrier bearings on. Alright, so our bearings are on. So now we can go ahead and put the internals of the carrier together, the clutch pack and gears and everything. Got the spring washer plate disc thingy in there. So now I want to get the clutch disc on here. So we will get a sopping wet clutch disc. Get it aligned on there. A disc plate with the fresh side against the disc, and then we will set that against the spring plate in here. Awesome. So then same thing, another clutch disc. Clutch plate, fresh side against the disc, washer, convex side out, and then this sits on top. Well, the astute viewers will probably note that I have screwed up that tone wheel for the speedometer. Needs to go on here. It needs to go in there before the bearing. So now I'm kind of in an uncomfortable spot because I need to try and carefully remove the new bearing without breaking it because I don't have another one. So yeah, this will be fun. Okay, so this is why I like to grease stuff like this, because that way it's easier to come back off when it needs to. Fortunately, with the 2-jaw puller, I was able to easily turn the wrench, and I barely had to turn the top of it with much force, and it pulled the bearing carefully right back off. So yeah, that was a screw up. Don't do that. Remember to put your tone wheel on first. we're ready to transfer our ring gear over from the open carrier to the limited slip one. And this is just sitting here. Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and whiz these all off and put it on over here. And surprisingly, the ring gear hasn't been stuck on there too bad in either of these. I just left one bolt on each side on a couple threads and just pushed it down with my thumbs, and it was trying not to do that. Fortunately, we are okay there. But old ring gear, new to us carrier. It just sits on there nice, and now we just got to put the bolts in. Alright, so here's where we get to start setting up the diff. So I went ahead and put the carrier in there. Yeah, I know I need to go put the locking tabs back on. I'll have to take it out again anyway, so I'll do that then. So I'm doing the opposite of what the WSM says, because they have you take the pinion gear out, which I can't do. Well, I'm not doing because it's part of the output shaft, and I don't want to deal with that. I'm just going to do it the other way. I'm putting passenger side flat against the case, and I just put these couple bolts here just literally just finger tight, and measured that distance and got, what did I get, 1.88 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and pick out some shims and go for 1.88 minus 0.3 for the bearing preload. So I need 1.5 millimeters worth of shims, and I have a whole stack of them here to pick from and a few new ones in there. So we'll measure those out, and then we'll have to figure out the backlash. They are a used ring and pinion. Whenever you do that, you're supposed to go ahead and measure what it was before you take it apart. I forgot. So we are going to have to just go off the pattern. So the original backlash on this gear set appears to have been 0.17 millimeters. And of course we can't set it to that because it's used. So we'll use some of that fancy blue paint. Have some up here. Yeah. We'll use that, we'll check the pattern, we'll measure the backlash with the dial indicator just to make sure it's reasonable, but mainly we'll go off the pattern to make sure it's good. Alright, so I went and tried to set it up, measure in the backlash. I set it to original spec plus about 20%. So now we're going to go ahead and check the pattern, and that'll ultimately dictate where it winds up, but we should at least be close. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of this blue paint stuff on the gear teeth, and we will see where we wind up. Let's go ahead and spin this around. See what our contact pattern looks like. Alright, so looks like we might be a little more towards the top than the bottom, but honestly the pattern doesn't look too bad. I mean, it does look decent. Yeah. Alright, we went ahead and after, I'm happy with the gear mesh pattern. It looks perfectly good to me. So I went ahead and took off the side plates, put the O-ring in it and the seal for the axle shaft, put it back together, and I put a little bit of the marking compound. Alright, well, we got the transmission all back together. The back covers on, top covers on. It's full of oil, seals, everything. I tried recording that earlier, but the battery died, so not sure if it got much of it or not. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get air back in the car now. Well, we got our transmission back in the car. Suspension and crossmember, everything's bolted back up. Hook up the ABS and pad wear sensors. And let's see, we got all the wiring plugged back in up here. Got the coilovers plugged back or bolted back up. So really, just gotta get those last few things on and put the exhaust on, and we should be good to go. Okay, everything back here is all put back together. Do have a couple of the belts off the front because I was putting on a shorter fan belt and kind of stopped running the air pump because it's not doing us anything good right now. But the belt I got for that was too long, and when I tried spinning it, the air pump, the bearings were kind of nasty in it, so don't want to keep running it, and I'll have to get another belt, and it's too late to get one today. But oh yeah, so the alternator belt's off, so all the warning lights are going to stay on the dash, but should be able to start the car and see if the input bearing's happy. Wow. Listen to that, no noise. No horrible noises from the differential. So, clutch is out. This is where it was making noise before. Clutch in, clutch out, clutch in, clutch out. Effectively no noise. So, I think we're good. Alright, so went out and drove the car after putting everything back in, and it seems like it's okay. I put in, Stay Lube 75W90 oil for it at the recommendation of people that are way smarter than me, and it seems like it shifts nice and smooth, and the rear end works good. I didn't do any hard launches because I don't want to beat on it, but stepping on it, pulling out of a turn, it'll kick the back end out a little bit if you step on it hard. So it's the differential's definitely working. I tried 2-point in the driveway because it's steep down there and at an angle, so I have to come in and I put that wheel on the grass and try pull up the driveway. Didn't even try to spin the inside wheel; it just went right up with giving power to the wheel that was on the cement. So that's all good. So far it seems like everything's working good. And you can still tell something's rotating in there when the clutch is engaged near neutral. It's not making bad noises, though, like it was before. So far that's all good. So, for now, mechanically, everything's working pretty well with the car. So, guess really we just got to work on some cosmetic stuff. And the only sort of mechanical issue it's got going on still is that it's still got some sort of shake whenever you get to 80 miles an hour or so, but that could be wheel balance, so I'll probably get them rebalanced. I did notice that my air pump bearings are making a little bit of noise, so for the time being I put on a shorter belt that bypasses the air pump and just drives the fan itself. Needed the 21-inch belt or 20-inch belt for this. It's not overly taut, so I don't think it's hurting the bearings. Here's that air pump. If I can
doesn't sound great. So
it ain't spinning for now. Honestly, really probably not going to bother fixing it, but one day I can put new bearings in it. It still functions, so it's alright. Other good news, sort of an update, is the AC is still working good. It's been over a year since I converted it to 134. Still blows cold. So, like I said, I mean, everything mechanically seems pretty good. There are a little bit of leaks in the valley from the intake, and there's some oil puddled in there, some valve covers and stuff. So, I mean, it could use stuff like that, but nothing that's detrimental to it. So, we're kind of shifting towards cosmetic stuff now. So far, it's running good.